If your tenant fails to pay you after, I think it's 15 days or 16 days, you can lock them out. You call the sheriff, they haven't paid, you got X amount of days, give me my money back, or you're locked out. If you are buying a commercial, do not put it in your own personal name.
Welcome back, everybody. You know what it is. This is the DC Talks podcast with David Chinelli. I'm your co-host, Ono Sinde, as they call me, Agent 00, as you already know.
Nobody calls you that.
Listen, let me have this, as I've said over the past several episodes.
Okay, Isaac, have you ever once called him Agent 00? I think the only person who calls him Agent 00 is my buddy Dennis, because he loves that. That's that one guy.
My buddy Agent 00. Whenever we come for cigar nights.
He's the only one.
No, I've heard it a couple times too. I have a couple supporters in that cigar night. All Agent 00. Right. Where's Agent 00? Anyways, guys.
Maybe I'll stop inviting you.
Please don't. The discussion for today's episode, we're going to be talking about commercial real estate. You know, we've covered a lot of topics in residential, condos, semi-detached. We did a couple episodes a couple weeks ago on how the market is doing. But a lot of us haven't really touched the topic of commercial. It seems very far out. People who are seasoned investors within like the residential space, this is something that you might be thinking about, and we saw it as a good opportunity for us to unpack it. DC is a great person to discuss this with because he's leased out many commercial properties. Sold a few. You're looking at investing in different commercial properties pretty soon.
Buying this one soon,
right? So there's a lot to learn, and I'm also curious to learn from DC as well. What are the do's and don'ts when it comes to commercial real estate, and how we can prepare ourselves when that time comes, and how to spot opportunities, et cetera, et cetera. So, DC, my guy, good to be back here with you. So, to kick things off, when it comes to commercial real estate, what are some of the rules that are in residential real estate that do not apply on the commercial side?
Like on the purchase, what do you mean as a tenant? Like this, so commercial is a different animal, right? Like for example, the purchase. If you're purchasing, like a lot of times you have to put more than 35% down when you're purchasing a property. That's one thing. And then again, talk with a broker. You have to go with a broker that knows how to do commercial real estate. And there's different fees, and everything's different. Like even when you're purchasing a property, there's like a lot of times you have to do environmental studies, those kinds of and then if it has tenants in there, you got to know like what the leases are like, what are you buying it for, like how long do I have to keep these tenants for, etc. So there's a lot of different rules when it comes to that. And there's other rules as a landlord. So that's what I'm saying. Which one do you want to talk about? Like this, there's a different. But why would somebody want to go with commercial, right? If you want to be a landlord is a great question. So I remember my cousin had bought a property, I had leased it out, and the tenant ended up being like screwing a whole bunch of people over in the building, and he was a professional tenant, and he was leasing it out, subleasing it, didn't tell anybody else, and then they stopped paying, and then it became a whole kerfuffle.
Is that the right term, professional tenant, that applies?
Professional tenant means somebody knows how to shirk the system.
Okay.
Knows how their ins and outs of the system, how to basically live for free, or find or ways around it. So he was a professional tenant, and like all of the references all checked out, everything worked out, and they knew how to fudge it. It's getting harder and harder. They're coming up with more tools and stuff for tenants. Now the problem with a residential tenant is they have according to the landlord-tenant board, they have all the rights. You basically can't kick them out. Even if you follow the right channels, it takes them a while to get them out. Like we've had situations where we had the tenant signed an agreement, which is from the landlord-tenant board to end an agreement because we had sold the property. It's called an N11, and they were supposed to move. Well, they prolonged the sale for like 3 or 4 months, and we had to pay them cash for keys. And so my client needed the money. We were lucky enough that the buyers were moving in personally, but they were able to hold off and keep the rate for those 3 months, and we were able to figure out a solution. But sometimes it doesn't happen, right? Whereas commercial, and this tenant wasn't paying. In commercial real estate, if you're a tenant, like as you're a landlord, you can ask a lot more out of your tenants. So what's one of the things you can ask for? You can ask them to pay for your taxes, your maintenance, and your insurance. It's called TMI, and it's a package. So part of your rent. So you're renting out a property, a commercial. So let's say if you have a retail business or office, there's two different types of, there's many, like let's call it two different types of leases of what you can get. One of them is called a gross lease, where you just pay one lump sum every month plus HST. So it's $5,000. It includes everything, right? You have to pay your own hydro, your own water, all that stuff too, but no taxes, insurance, maintenance, everything else is all included in that price. The second one is what we call a net lease, but they can be net. Like if you net means basically the tenant covers everything. You got to replace the roof. Eventually the tenant will pay for the roof. That's part of the maintenance, right? If you want to pay for, the taxes, they have to pay the taxes. A lot of commercials are paying for the property taxes, and it's part of the TMI. Even tenants technically that are paying gross leases, well, your landlord should be calculating how much your taxes are. It's part of the lease.
What does TMI stand for?
Taxes, maintenance, and insurance.
Okay.
So what can happen? So for example, as if you're signing a net lease, or let's call it a net lease, let's just make it simple. That means that you are subject to every year that your TMI, your taxes, maintenance, and insurance are going to change. So there's an estimate at the beginning of the year that the landlord should give you based on last year's, how much you paid the taxes, how much they paid for insurance, and their maintenance, right? And then on top of that, even your property management fee can be paid there. The landlord's not out of pocket any of that, right? So you get an estimate, and every month your tenant pays towards that TMI. And there should be a true up at the end of the year, see what was actually charged and what the tenant paid. Now, if there's a surplus, you can give the tenant back the amount of money they overpaid, or you can put it as a credit towards them. If there's a deficit, a lot of times there is, then the tenant has to pay up the amount, right? That doesn't happen in residential. Tenants don't give a shit if taxes go up every year.
So this is the agreement, this is my rent.
Right, exactly. A maintenance part of it could be of the actual unit. We had to replace a roof. Now, you can't charge the tenant $25,000 to replace a roof in 1 year. You have to amortize that over the longevity of the year. So, and your accountant will tell you whether it's 10 years or 15 years. Let's make it simple. Say you replace a roof, it was $25,000, and it costs, and it's the amortization, so the longevity of it's 25 years. That means your maintenance should go up $1,000 per year to cover that cost of the roof. So the tenant pays for that, not the landlord, right? So that's a huge difference. I have a sixplex. I had to replace two roofs, one for my coach house in the back and one for upstairs. If I wanted to, I can go back and try to increase the rent, and I'd have to go to the landlord-tenant board. The landlord-tenant board would have to agree to this extra amount to charge them, but most of the time they won't. So I have to go to the board and ask them to increase, because my unit was built before November 15, 2018. So any kind of increases has to be approved by the landlord-tenant board. That's not the case here, right? So that's a huge difference, right? If taxes increase, so is your TMI. Again, the landlord doesn't pay that out. Another great thing about a landlord is if your tenant fails to pay you after, I think it's 15 days or 16 days, you can lock them out. You call the sheriff, they haven't paid, you got X amount of days, give me my money back, or you're locked out.
So the eviction rules are more in favor for
Absolutely.
the landlord.
It's simple. It's bang. It's quick. It's commercial. You're not living there. You're running a business. That's it. We can lock you out. I've had to lock out 2 tenants already.
At a commercial
At
property.
a commercial. That's right.
That you were managing, or that you
So one of them I inherited when my dad passed away was the tenant. He wasn't paying. We were trying to be nice. We locked him out. We got another person in there, and I had to lock them out too. Happened twice in the same unit. They were just not managing. Restaurants are hard. They're restaurants. They're hard to come by. We were being very lenient with them, but to the point that still ended up costing us, the second one, over $40,000.
So when you say commercial, just to get the right definition of what a commercial property is, how do you define it? Because I can put...
So, yeah, okay. Good question. It could even involve residential, because you can have you can have a residential property. So that's different if you have residential tenants, but a commercial property. So for example, I have a sixplex. According to TD, which my bank was before, anything more than 4 units is considered commercial. So which means that means also your taxes increase. When you go from residential to commercial, it changes, right? So I'm like, no, it's not a commercial property. That RBC allows you to have up to 6 stores, 6 units. So I went to RBC, I'm like, no, I could build above my coach house, but then make a 7th unit. That means all of a sudden the city recognizes it as commercial. That means RBC has to I have to go get another commercial mortgage. I can't actually go through RBC unless I don't know if they have a commercial division, but it becomes more expensive because commercial rates are higher, right? taxes are much higher. And for me, if they're tenants, my tenants, I can't go back to them because it's built before. Like, so it's kind of a hybrid, right? It's kind of like, in between. But a commercial could be like a retail store. It could be anything really that they're making.
So zoning doesn't matter.
Look, there are zoning things. It does matter. Like, so for example, this unit is called commercial, but it could be split, right? So there could be, the zoning matters in that sense, which you can have at your commercial unit. So zoning does matter. Some of these units have apartments up top. This used to be an apartment. So we used to have residential, and then below us is commercial, right? But now it's all commercial, so we're paying higher taxes. So it does. You can, but it does matter.
It does matter. When it comes to now buying a commercial property, typical, let's say as a first-time buyer, you coming in the residential space, it's like 5% as a first-time home buyer. What does that look? You can't do that for commercial. How does it work on that end?
So again, you have to get a commercial mortgage broker. Most of your residential mortgage brokers won't touch commercial.
They won't touch commercial.
And you have to pay, I believe you have to pay certain fees to the mortgage broker as well. So it's very different, right? And again, the amount of deposits changed. The other thing is, before that, you have to have your lawyers also involved right away as well. It's also contingency of like lawyers all of a sudden have to review it. I also find with commercial deals, they take a lot longer for their contingencies, like their conditions. Like we had one we had sold, and we were conditionally sold for a year and a half. They kept extending because they needed to have, when they bought our property, in order for them to make sense, they had to buy the next door neighbor. So we allowed them for a year and a half to negotiate, try to buy the building, and they weren't able to buy it, and the deal was dead. So the conditions could be a lot longer, right? And what is involved in them, again, we're talking like environmental stuff, we're talking look at all leases and stuff. It just takes a lot longer, right? But the one thing I do have to say, going back to being a commercial landlord, it's also very different than as a residential, because when you're doing a commercial lease, right, it's like for 5 years, usually 3-5 years, plus you have an extension clause in there as well. Your lawyer, we always recommend your lawyer needs to review it. It has to be reviewed. You have to pay a lawyer to do it. Whereas residential, we do it's all on a standard form. There's no standard forms really. Every lease is different, right? So your lawyer needs to review, make sure you're not getting screwed over, right? Yeah. So the second thing is so your lawyer should also have in there too, like a provision in case you haven't negotiated on price. So you can have an extension. So for example, you have a 5 year and then have maybe 2 more terms for additional 5 years. What happens is usually a year to 6 months before the end of your first term, you negotiate on the new price. So you want to have market value of your price, right? You can go back and forth. If you don't come to an agreement, but you want to still occupy that space at the end of that 5 years and you're still negotiating, technically the landlord could double your rent until you come up to an agreement legally. And if you don't pay double that rent, he can lock you out.
Kick you out in how many days you said?
15.
15 days. 15 days.
1-5. Yeah.
Sounds a ruthless side of the business.
Well, that's exactly.
Yeah.
But it's attractive. But the other thing is sometimes if your property is unique, it may take you years to rent out the property to get a tenant. So it's almost better to keep the tenant but get market value. And there's arbitration as well for rents as well. But I'm just saying that's another difference as well. But that's why your lawyer needs to review the property, right? You're make sure you look at your lease. It's very different. And in there as well, they also have provisions in case you wanted to, tear down this property. Like if you want to rip it down, where are you going to move me? Like there's a relocation. You could put in the lease, you can't relocate me. Most big companies are like, go F yourself. If we want to knock down the building, sell it to somebody else, we'll relocate you to something similar in the similar neighborhood. So I'm almost seeing like 100% of those happening now. Like we're seeing some sort of relocation clause in all of our leases.
So you mentioned that the average rent on a commercial property lengthwise is about 5 years.
Sometimes it's less. Yeah.
I've seen
3 to 5 is typical, right? We try to get, if I have an established business and we know that they're going to do well, we'll do 10 years. And why would you want to do 10 years? Well, you pace out an increment. Hopefully the small increments are going to be less than what the market's going to be in the next 10 years. And we find that's why a lot of times the landlords don't want to do 10 years because they don't know what the market rent's going to be in 10 years and they may be shooting themselves in the foot. What they think is a good deal now maybe a horrible deal in 10 years. So it's very hard to get a landlord to agree to 10 years, especially if they're not sure what they want to do with the building.
Exactly. Yeah. Let's talk about the hidden costs, right? So the property taxes, how does that differ from a residential to a commercial?
You don't, as a residential tenant, you don't pay any of the taxes. You don't give a shit what the taxes go up.
Well, not tenant, but let's say if you own the residential space and now you own a commercial space.
Oh, you say the increments are very similar? No, they're not. And it's based on a different parameters. But, if you're in Toronto, go talk to Olivia Chow.
She's everywhere.
I can't stand her.
Everywhere.
She's dancing everywhere in that
Everywhere.
weird, awkward, like Elaine Bettis kind of.
She's so funny. When you're looking at a property to invest in, there's something I learned back in uni called a cap rate. It kind of shows you the aspect of how much you're going to be earning over time when you actually calculate the numbers and assess if this is actually a good investment.
So what
Can
a
you
cap
give a refresher of this?
Yeah. So what a cap rate is you take away any like mortgage funding. You don't look at the funding. You want to look at what a property is going to earn you based on price and the income coming in. So what you need to do is establish in order to get a cap rate is to figure out what the net operating income is. So net operating income is you get obviously your gross incomes, which means all the rent's coming in, and then you deduct expenses. Right? So for example, right off it's easier with a net rent because you just toss out the TMI because again, it's taxes, maintenance, insurance. You don't have to worry about taxes if they're covering all the costs unless you're covering it. But then you get the rent and you subtract any other expenses you might need to take on there. And then, so if taxes, everything else is covered, maybe your net rent is your net operating income. And you take that number and you divide it by the purchase price, right? And you get a percentage. And good cap rates, they used to be 10%, right? That means you're earning 10% on your money. The reason why we do this is like, again, I can compare. If I'm buying a $2 million property, we're both buying $2 million, the same property for $2 million. Say I had $2 million to put down in cash and you only had $500,000. Well, you can't compare. Mine's cash flow positive because I'm putting all the cash down, but you have to get a mortgage. So it's hard to compare. That's why we do this. So we eliminate any of the cost of the funding in order to harmonize to see what the potential in the property is. But yeah, so commercial properties now you're probably looking anywhere north of 5% is good. So which technically means you can pay, that's a bunch of 10% every year, pay back in 10 years. Essentially, that's kind of the idea.
I see.
To make it easy, yes. Mm-hmm.
So let's say you're trying to sell a property. Typical residential might take you 2 months, 3 months. Just conservatively
commercial,
speaking.
There is no typical.
But that's why it might
don't.
take you.
It all depends on area. It depends on price. It depends on what your tenants are like. It's different.
It can take like a year.
It could take longer. It could take years. The unit down the street, which used to be TD, they did something I had never seen in residential or commercial before, and they actually had an offer date. They listed for $4 million. They ended up getting $6 million, I think, for it. And it was I've never seen a bidding war actually happen in commercial properties. It was the first time, and it sold fairly quickly. Usually, it's not like that. So commercial realtors are also very different than residential realtors, right? And that's one of the reasons why I didn't want to get into commercial. Again, I was an analyst. I dealt with numbers. People getting into commercial side, it's like dealing with corporate again. People just care about numbers. There's nothing nice and fluffy about it. It's all, my cousin John is a great commercial realtor in Etobicoke. Anytime I look at commercial properties, I do talk to him first and we kind of bounce ideas off each other. But he hates the residential side. He won't touch a residential. Whereas I like dipping my finger because I have the numbers brain. I like doing the commercial stuff, but I don't want to do it all the time. Right? It's not as fun, it's exciting. So it's also, the approach is much different, right? So it's the first time I've seen them do a residential approach to commercial.
And is there there's no staging, there's no nothing?
No.
It's just
the emptier the shell, the better. But what we are seeing now, and Chris and I do this too, we do high-end pictures and videos. So when we list a couple of commercial properties, we're bringing the residential into it. So we're trying to make it look nice. I try to clean it up, but look and make it look nice. And high-end pictures, we see some shitty listings. If some people don't care, right? They just care about the numbers, what it looks like. So there are a couple of shitty pictures from your phone. it'll still sell. They're not spending the money that we spend, but we kind of like spending them. Like I don't like spending money, but I like having the higher end. Even for the commercial side, we lowered the price the other day, and we have videos on Instagram and YouTube and all that stuff too about this commercial space. And then the seller's like, our last agent didn't do that. I'm like, yeah, nobody does this for commercial. It's different. It's a different animal.
It's a different game.
It's a different game.
The glamour is different because when you come in there, you're seeing it for what it is. You're seeing the space for what it is, and it's up to your imagination to decide, well, what am I going to make out of it? You know,
but the other thing is, so when you're looking at the reason why things don't sell or don't rent in commercial, it takes a little bit longer. A lot of properties are unique and businesses are unique. So it has to fit a certain mold, or it has to be able to be malleable into their mold, and not like there are certain criteria that certain people need, right? For example, a restaurant needs to have a certain amount of bathrooms and has to be accessible by wheelchairs. Not every institution's able to afford that or able to transition a property into that. So, and then you also have to have hood vents. Well, if you have residential upstairs, how's a hood vent going to go through through the properties? So there's certain properties that aren't conducive to certain businesses, right? So it could take a while, but then you have highly sought after areas, it could be different.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sometimes even like some spaces, they're built to be restaurants, right? Because they have a commercial kitchen set up.
Well, the whole process is like once you put the suppression in there, which helps for fire, once you put the hood fan in there, you basically have a restaurant. You can't really convert it. It's almost impossible to convert it back, and it doesn't make sense to convert it back. So the one property we have on Yonge Street, Yonge and Eglinton area, it was converted into a restaurant. So it has the huge hood fan, and it's open kitchen kind of concept. Now it's a sushi restaurant, but it didn't make sense when we had to lock out the tenants. It didn't make sense for us to change it into anything else. Everybody came there like, and plus restaurants were like, this is fantastic. We don't have to pay for the hood fan. It's already there, because that's a huge expense to remove that. So it costs like, I don't know, at the time, it was like $50,000, I don't know, like $80,000 to put this hood fan and all the venting. It costs a lot of the suppression and the fire safeties and the drainage and all that stuff too. We would have got like less than pennies on the dollar to remove it. Nobody's going to come and buy it. There's no resale value for it. Maybe scrap metal is at the time. So it's like, as a landlord, if you're taking on certain businesses, a lot of times when the business leaves, they're allowed to take their trade fixtures with them, which means they bring it back to the shell it was before. So if you have a hairdressing unit and you set up all of your sinks and stuff like that, and your stations, well, once the lease is done, you could take those sinks with you. Right? You can cap them off. You can take them with you. That's called the trade fixture, right? But with the hood fan stuff, you can't do that. You can't do that at a restaurant. Like I guess technically they could take it out, but it's going to be hard to do. And then how do you revert it back into the way it was before? It's going to cost them more money to try to put it back to the way it was than to remove that hood fan. So you're almost stuck with that hood fan.
With when you're trying to attract like a high quality tenant, let's say you have the restaurant, and you want to get like a Timmy's comes knocking on the door and says, hey, we want to make this into a Timmy's. Do you charge a Timmy's a higher rent than what you would like a regular shawarma joint, where the foot traffic isn't as much as like a Timmy's? The
Timmy's, though, actually, they got the property down the street here, and they paid a shitload of money for it. I was surprised they actually went for that. But some people do that. Yeah, absolutely. Timmy's also is not just Timmy's, Starbucks as well. There's certain parameters that not every property can fulfill, right? And I'm surprised Timmy's actually got the one over here because it won't have a drive-through.
Yeah.
So
drive-throughs in there too. Yeah.
But they paid, I think, $65 a foot or something like that, or something. It was a crazy amount. My cousin and I were talking about it. He goes, I'm surprised they paid for it, but they needed the location. Locations. This is a great location, Jaded Bloor, right? It's a great location. So they wanted it and they paid for it. But I also find if they're paying a lot of money, they probably will do a longer lease as well,
like a 25 year lease or something.
It should be a longer lease. Yeah.
Because I know, like with McDonald's, they own the land that it sits on.
So stop right there. Right? McDonald's is not a burger company.
It's a real estate.
It's a real estate company.
Yeah,
they're so smart. And then you want to explain? Go for it. Once I learned that they don't give a shit about their burgers and who like that too. I'm like, they may be the devil or they may be the smartest people I've ever met.
Yeah, I mean,
if you don't know what McDonald's does, Owen's going to explain it.
So McDonald's, back in the day when Ray Kroc bought McDonald's from the McDonald brothers, he was busy franchising McDonald's to everybody. The churchman, the priest, the person in the corner. Hey, you can buy a franchise, but he wasn't really making any money from the franchise. He comes across this man, when he's asking a loan at the bank, can I get a loan to build another McDonald's? And the guy tells him, this guy was listening to the conversation beside him, and a random person approaches him outside. He's like, hey, why don't you actually just buy the land the McDonald's sits on? You can actually charge the rent that the McDonald's sits on, because if you're making the burgers, you're not going to turn a profit, but the land value is always going to increase. You own it over time. It can always demand a higher rent because you own the land the McDonald's sits on. So now McDonald's is one of the largest real estate companies in the world. They barely make, I won't say they barely make any money, but a majority of their cash flow comes from.
Well, they were smart because they make multiple revenue streams. So the largest, obviously, the rent back to them. Then they have to build based on their specs, and they have to use their architects and everything. So they're getting paid that way. Plus, they need their franchise fees. And then the food products they have to buy from McDonald's, right? So it's all, and they say it's under all the guys who will do all the marketing and stuff for it. And it does make sense. So they're making like four, I don't know if there's another avenue. Just that's what I'm saying. They're making multiple different avenue streams into one franchise.
Yeah. So let's say McDonald's moves from that property. So now you have to lease the property lease the property because they already built the McDonald's structure. If they leave, now you're the tenant for McDonald's pretty much.
Now, again, there are certain situations. I think there was one McDonald's down the street here, and I don't know if McDonald's actually owned it or not because they left. It's the only time I've ever seen that happen. Usually when a McDonald's is on the property, they change the franchisee, not the actual property. The property so you've seen those huge renovations. Well, somebody just bought into the property, wanted to revamp it, right? It's not. So I find it funny. I think, anyway, so it rarely happens that you see somebody like McDonald's renting a property. I don't know if I haven't checked to see if they own that one or not. But anyway, it was just interesting that they moved. It's the only time I've ever seen them move. And it was a double decker. It was I think Bloor and Runnymede. I think that's on the corner there. And that's like a wing place.
Yeah. No, that's interesting. Not everybody has the ability to get into commercial, but there's other avenues. You can do that using REITs as well too. So, you don't have the control over it.
Do people know what a REIT is? REIT?
I was going to let you take the reins on that.
Well, you brought it up.
Okay.
It's a way of cashing in as a landlord without actually being a landlord.
So, you have the Rio cans of the world.
And it's not just commercial, by the way. You know that, right?
Yeah, of course. But you can invest in like a Smart Centers, which owns Walmarts. They build all the Walmarts. So you can be a shareholder of that. You can be a shareholder of RioCan, which now you're investing into the real estate investment trust. But now you don't have the headaches of being a landlord. And
so what Owen's not telling you is what a REIT is. REIT is real estate investment. So what it is basically like they own properties, and what they do is they collect the rents, and then you can buy basically shares into the REITs. And instead of owning, like if you're putting your money into owning a property, you buy shares and you get revenue based on the rent. So it's a way of having your hands off owning a property, but owning multiple properties, a little piece of them basically here and there, because what they're doing is they're bringing like say 4 or 5 projects into one real estate REIT, they'll call it. And once the revenue comes out, they'll pay you out based on your shares. And that's basically, so it's like having a stock, but in real estate. So it's like being a landlord. So you're basically, it's tied to the land value and the rents, but you're not having to go fix a toilet. You don't have to go you don't have to go collect rent. You don't have to do any of that stuff. So and it's based on the profits, how you get paid out.
Exactly. So that's another avenue. If you're looking to get in commercial, you can simply start by investing in a REIT. Another one is also joining a syndicate, right? If you're also looking to actually physically get boots on the ground, you can pool your money into a syndicate with other people who are going to be investors. Could you elaborate more on syndicates and how they work?
Yeah, so syndicates are basically, you said, there's a bunch of people coming together and they're building a property, whether it's, I think The Well was a syndicate, I believe, downtown. I think there was, Tridel was one of the builders. There's a whole bunch of builders. They came together and they built a property together, and they just, it's a way of like multiple people bringing in more money to build a property they might never be able to do on their own. So it's basically what it's like.
I see. Moving forward for you.
And then there's also like, if you don't confuse that with like a banking syndicate. When I used to be an analyst, we had a syndicate which we could borrow money from. So, for example, when we went to go to we'll call them debentures, bonds, let's call them. We had 6 banks in our syndicate. So we went to market. So we released them. Those 6 banks were able to share to basically to get the money. They were able to sell them to investors, and CIBC was like heading one time. You got 40% of all of the T-bills or the debentures. You can sell them, and they were making money off it. And RBC got a blah blah blah. And then one time when the Scotia pissed us off, they're out of the syndicate. So it's like that's another way. So think about like that's basically like a banking syndicate as well. It's a way of raising money and getting things done.
Exactly. For you, this is something that you briefly mentioned to me that you want to now get into more commercial side of things. What to you stands out as a good property?
But I'm doing it differently because my dad had owned properties in which that's the commercials I want to buy. So the reason why I want to buy certain the properties, my dad had bought in this one's a great location. He's bought in very strategic locations. My brother's, one of my brothers, a professor at Laurier. He's not going to be in Toronto, so he doesn't care so much about owning commercial properties. And I don't think he has he's not really involved in desire to do it. My other brother, same thing. He's a hairdresser and stuff. He just is not into it. So I said to my mom, my dad never wanted to sell the properties, and he wanted just to keep them moving on. My brothers, they don't care about it. I don't want them selling off to somebody just because they don't want it. So I approached my mom and I said, let's just use the owner. I said, what we could do now is I could start purchasing at market value, if not higher market value, the money you get from you put into the trust. So when she passed away, the brothers will get the amount of money I pay now, plus on top of that, whatever they earn on interest, et cetera. So everyone will get paid out, right? And that way they don't have to worry. But the way the property will stay in the Cinelli family, and not go to somebody else just because if it sells and we don't own anybody, then if I can't come up with the money and I have to sell all the properties, that's not going to bode well for me. So I want to keep my dad's promise, at least the 3 core that I want, right? And 2 of them are on Yonge Street, one of them's here. But the other thing is I also see before my dad died, the day before he died, I had ideas. I had started taking over some of the properties we were talking about, and I had some ideas from the other one too. And he loved this one idea we had on Yonge Street. So I want to see that come to fruition as well. That's more of a longer term stuff. For that one, I want to build, and right now there's one apartment upstairs and it's underutilized potential. So I think I told him hey, we can build out the property and build up. And I'm really excited about that one. This one I'm excited because now it's my office. I think there's potential in it, but not to that extent, right? That one I can actually.
So do you own the downstairs as well too?
My mom does.
Your mom does. Oh, so
my dad had purchased this back in 1980.
So the store downstairs, that's your tenant as
Correct.
Well. Got you. I see.
Well, not my tenant, my mom's tenant.
Your mom's tenant.
Yes.
All right. By the way, happy birthday to the late Mr. Cinelli, DC. Just want to pay some respects to him yesterday.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah. As work tour is wrapping up, what are your words of advice to the individuals who are thinking about commercial real estate? They are residential investors, but now they're looking in the horizon. I'd like to be a commercial real estate investor. What are some of the questions they should ask themselves before diving into this side of things?
There's a million questions to ask. So why do you want to get into the commercial side? It basically is, what do you know about the commercial side? Who's going to help you navigate through that? Is it already tenanted? What are the rents like? What are you looking for a return on the property? What have the other properties been selling like? What's the last average return you're getting on that? Where are you going to come up with the money? Because it's a lot, budget's a big part of it. Where do you see the long term with this, right? Because are you buying the property now because you can see the future of them building condos? My dad had purchased a property at Yonge and Davisville for the sole purpose that he knew a developer was going to come and knock it down. So he paid 2.1 for it. When he passed away, he was going to give it away, but we ended up selling it for $4 million. He doubled my mom's profit. And it was but that was the idea, because the builder wanted to do.
So you have leverage when
of course. Comes. Yeah. And we ended up having to do the same thing at Dundas because I sold another property there too. My dad, for double what my dad had actually agreed to sell for 8 years after he passed. Because again, we were stuck with what happened in that kind of situation was the next door neighbor was going to build and not include us. So when it comes to purchasing a property, you got to look at the future value. So there is what it's earning. That's a cost of capital. That's what we talked about, your cap rate. Cost of capital, they'll look at your rents and and the future value on that, and that's what you get paid on. And it's always lower than a development cost. So when a developer will come in, will look at a property and it'll say, well, how much density can I build on this? Density means how many units can I put on here? If I build a condo, how high can I go? How wide can I go? How deep can I go? Because again, once you put that shovel in the ground, right? it's much cheaper for them to go up and they can build more units, right? As opposed to like a low rise. So they need to know that. So are you in an area where you can build density on this property? Because that value is more than the cost of capital. If you can purchase a cost of capital but sell for density, it's huge, right? It's like, and that's what we did with the couple of those properties. So know that, like, talk with commercial, like what's the density of that there? What's your long term? Always, what's long term? And commercial, I find it's got to be longer term, way longer than residential. Like you can flip a property in like a few years. I don't suggest it, but I think commercial, like if you hold the property for 20, 30 years, pass it on to your family, I think that should be your goal. So there's a lot of questions and they're like, sorry to be long-winded, but it's one of those things. It's not as simple as, well, the tenants are easier to handle because if they don't pay, I lock them out in 15 days. Yeah, but if you lock them out and you got a unique property, that property can stay vacant for 2 years and now you're eating all the costs.
Yeah. So the tenant kind of has power too, because even when it comes to renewal time, they can negotiate with you.
Absolutely.
And say like, hey, like we've been here for 10.
You can't be a dick and be like, oh, I want double the rent next year. And like, they're trying to go fly a kite, get the hell out of here. Like, I'm not going to pay that. So same thing, residential, know that there is fluctuations. It's not always easy. That's the thing. It's not easy. And it's going to cost you more money to get the property too. Because remember, you're starting at least 35% down, if not more.
And typically these can go from like $5 million to $10 million.
Something like this is under $2 million. So you can get that. Yeah, it's under $2 million. But again, not everybody has $700,000, $800,000 lying around.
Yeah, I think people, when you think commercial, you're thinking, oh my God, commercial. You're thinking already like a plaza type of thing. You know,
plazas can be great. Yeah.
That's the image that comes in your mind. But you can also start with something a lot more manageable, sort of like this property that we're in right now. You know, you have the tenants down here. This is your office. Commercial.
And the other thing I would say with commercial properties, guys, if you are buying a commercial, do not put it in your own personal name. Start a corp. Yeah.
What's the importance of that?
It protects you personally from bankruptcy, from any fines, anything else that comes towards you. Like it should be a standalone corp. And then from that corp, you're able to probably pull equity based on the cash flow that it earns. And then you're able to build basically on that, right? And you can pay yourself out from them, but you're obviously going to pay taxes on that. You're also at a different tax bracket when it comes to tax purposes, right? So always, just for liability reasons,
set up a corp.
That also costs money, right? Even number companies, which are simple, like they're much simpler, like 4572 Ontario Limited, or whatever, like, or 1234 Ontario Limited, they still cost money to set up. But then you have an HST number, you're able to file. That's if you don't have an HST number, you remember commercial tenants are paying HST. So I think you have to set up a corp, right? Because you can't just buy it personally. But make sure you do that first. That's
amazing. We might have to do a part 2 on this because there's so many other things we can also dive deeper into to give the audience a full breadth.
Are we going to go look at commercial properties right now for you to buy?
Pardon?
We're going right now to look at commercial properties for you to buy, right?
Yeah,
because you have $700,000 in your pocket right now.
Right here in DC.
Right,
pockets are deep, baby.
We're working on getting you a condo first.
Yes, let's work on that. Anyways, ladies and gentlemen, hope you got some beginner knowledge on that. We're definitely going to plan another episode later down the line on a part 2, maybe picking specific parts of commercial real estate that we can really dive deep into, so we have more depth into the specific topic, and then we can go from there. But let us know what you think in the comments. If you think about commercial, you're looking into it, you have more things that you're considering, some things we should include when the time comes to discuss this again. We would love to hear from you. And again, have a great week. And thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you in the next one. Peace out.